Peace and blessings to the whole house, to the northern and to the southern kingdom, the kingdom of the Israelites. This is your big brother C. I've got my sister Christina and my brother Banya on today, and we're going to continue the discussion about our people and what's been happening with our people with respect to this whole specter of reparations. Before we go into it, I want the rest of the panel to introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump right into it. But before I even do that, I want to say shalom to everyone that's watching. Shalom to everybody who's in the chat. Also, shalom to those who are sneak listening and sneak watching, and also those who make the comments, make your foolish comments in the chat. Those of us who are our people, because I see this one comment, this one guy comments on all our videos. I said I wasn't going to give you no energy, and we didn't delete your comments, but we don't really listen to heathens here. So
right.
If you're a pale-faced heathen trying to tell us anything about the book or trying to tell us anything about reparations, we're not trying to hear that. So I'm just putting that out there so that when you hear this video, when you see this video and you understand why we didn't delete your comments will stand against you, and there will be a testimony against you. So you two introduce yourselves, and then we're going to jump right into it.
Yeah, all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High. This is Brother Bunya coming at y'all. Happy to be a part of the panels. Shalom and blessings to all people out there. Brother Najee, shalom and blessings. Brother Elisha, all people on the panel, Brother C, and Sister Y Society. All praise, honor, and glory to the Most High once again. Can't wait to get into the discussion.
Shalom, everyone. This is Christina, Y Society. Just happy to be here. Have you guys been taking examples from the ants? I say that not to be joking, but to be serious, because we should be seeking wisdom in everything that we do. And part of what you read in Proverbs relates to how busy the ants are, right? Look at the ants, oh, you sluggard. And so, the other day I had the opportunity to just look at a colony of ants, and it was interesting because I dropped some food and I thought that they were going to go and scatter around to get that item, but they were busy building. So they left the food there, and it really started really making me think about our day-to-day mission and attention and focus to detail, to where I'm building this thing, and even though I see something else, that doesn't mean I need to partake in that right now. I need to continue along my way. Brother C, with regards to the lurkers and the followers that like putting those comments, I still have the question of how they believe themselves to be credible authorities on this information to say anything at all, right? Like, what makes them believe that they're credible?
Well, I'm only saying that to the one fool, because I'm calling as such. The one fool to put the comment talking about the people who are innocent or who had nothing to do with it, and I'm paraphrasing, should not have to pay reparations. And so that's the same trope that his people peddle. But if he's a Bible believer or has anything to do with morality, you would know that, hey, if you destroy someone, then they need to be repaired. That's a biblical principle. I don't know if he's an atheist. He might be one of these cornball Christians that you can't find in the book. He might be one of these cornball Christians that stand on the KKK because the KKK was Christian. Anyway, I'm going to get off the soapbox. And if I keep going, I'll just keep rambling.
Yeah, go ahead, Brother Banya.
They don't really believe in God. They don't believe in all of that. They say they do, but they really don't. Because how could you reason to yourself that you serving a God, right, that's of justice, and that you're on the right side of justice when you do what you do to our people, And the same excuses that they got for reparations, the same ones they were telling our forefathers, So,
exactly.
Miss me with all that.
Yeah, I see it in the chats all over, and I typically ignore it because I feel like they're paid ops too, right? And the thing about the profession of justice is that righteousness goes along with that. You have to make something right in order for it to be just. You cannot remove righteousness from justice. So for the would-be Christians or whoever they are, the evangelicals, the Pope followers, whoever they are, they need to relook at righteousness and justice together if they're even capable of doing that before they even speak to us. And they still wouldn't be a credible witness or authority on what we're talking about.
Yeah, because when I hear him speaking to me it's appalling because I know they don't know the book and I know they have a false religion. And so I'm gonna since we're humoring this fool, let's humor him all the way. Let's give him all the energy that he needs so he can take his ass right back to hell where he belongs, where his ancestors are. Ronald Reagan,
Selah.
George Bush, Pete Hegseth is on his way. Netanyahu is on his way. That bastard Trump is on his way too. So let me show you the comment that this fool made, because that's exactly what he is a fool. Yeah, straight fool. Thou fool. That's what the book says.
Right?
Oh, you say, thou fool. Let me see. Let me present the thing.
Blot his name off the earth, Father.
Man. Okay, look at this clown idiot. And we left it up there, but look at what he said. Fortunately, only actual proven victims who have suffered actual tangible harm from the violation of individual rights are granted reparations. Michael P. Coffey, you are a fool, sir.
Yep.
Point blank.
Mm.
Point blank. And look at Battle of Yahuwah took care of him. But I noticed that this fool, and we're gonna let him make his comments, but we're addressing you, Michael P. Coffey, because I'm putting it out in the air that if you keep on coming on these videos, that your whole family be destroyed. Point blank. Because I'm not playing these tit for tat games with y'all anymore. If you come on here spouting this, I hope that your whole family get persecuted in the spirit and in the physical. And then when they go to hell, when the demons drag them to hell, that they get persecuted in hell. Now I'm gonna get off of it. If you want to continue to fool with us, by all means, do it at your own peril. All right, so let's get back to the real get back. I'm sorry I had to go on the tangent. I don't want to go on tangents.
No, we need to be able to talk about this stuff so that we can also show people how we deal with it, right? Don't waste your time too long in the chat with fools. You know they're gonna be there. We're gonna address it and move on. And that's what we're doing.
Give him that hot fire like you just gave him just now, and you trying to come in there like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
all right, so where were we before I interrupted the whole shot? I apologize.
Peace and blessings to everyone watching, except for the fools. You need some wisdom. Go get you some wisdom. That's where we were at. We were at greetings. Okay,
let's go ahead. Shalom to everybody in the chat. I see Najee. I see Blood of Cupid. That's my good brother. And I'm getting old, fam. But that's my good brother who's always on. You changed your name, Blood of Cupid. Put in what your real name was, and then it'll hit me. And then there's Robert Jordan. He punched in. Everybody that punched in, you guys hit the like button. If you punched in, you join it on. We gonna get started. Okay, sis. It's you the driver. I'm riding shotgun, but I like sitting in the back. So we gonna let Bonnie ride shotgun. I'm sitting in the back and just watch, but I'll control the media and whatnot.
Absolutely. So if you want to go ahead and start with the first slide, we'll just go right into it. We are not here, as you see, to debate feelings. We're not even here to debate opinions. We are recording the record, right? So we appreciate you all tuning in to the Descendants of Chattel Slavery Weekly. Today we're talking about the reparations contradiction and why are we the exception, okay? So as you can see, we're going to be repeating. Some information will be new to you all. Some of it will be an extension of what we've talked about before. And we'll start with on March 25th, 26th, the United States government stood before 193 nations and said, and I'm quoting this is what they testified to, that the United States does not recognize a legal right to reparations for historical wrongs that were not illegal under international law at the time they occurred. Okay, you see that quote right in the middle of this. And I want you to hold that statement because I went looking for proof, as you should, of what they meant. But what I found instead was proof of them actually paying reparations over and over again. Paid out, signed, funded, delivered, just not to us, right? Why are we the exception is the question. So we're going to follow the evidence. And, the question that we're going to continue to ask ourselves and also, look at when we hear about these things is if the United States does not recognize reparations, why does the historical record keep showing us reparations? Okay. I want you to think about that. If the US doesn't recognize reparations, why does the historical record keep showing us reparations? And if you have anything you want to elaborate on with that question, brothers, please just go ahead and jump in. If not, I'm just going to continue to move through the slide. Okay.
Yeah, continue.
So if you look at this slide that says the reparations contradiction, I want you to think about what it shows, right? All the information you need, you can take notes so that you can go and confirm this information later if you would like, take a screenshot, whatever you need to do. But I want you to look at what's on the left. You see right there in that image, it says the District of Columbia compensated through the Emancipation Act of 1864, signed by Abraham Lincoln. You know, people like to talk about Abraham Lincoln, okay, as if he's some freedom fighter or liberator. Enslaved people were freed. Slave holders received the federal compensation. So if you were wondering what the name of that act was, you can see it right there. The District of Columbia Compensated Emancipation Act of 1862. All right. Go ahead. And if you want to look that up at any time, you have that information. The formerly enslaved received no compensation. On the right, the United Nations building, the sign your ancestors never got to hold, our ancestors. Reparations are not a gift, they are justice. This is what we're talking about in the beginning. In order for justice to exist, righteousness or right standing has to exist too. You cannot do a whole group of people wrong generationally and then insist that no justice is due to them, right? That's not even on the path to making anything right. But we also must ask the question, and this is the question that I was asking in the beginning about people that come into our comments. How can we expect for a people that are not righteous, that have proven themselves to be wicked, to then somehow hold themselves accountable to be right, just, and fair, right? So it's why you see on the left of them being able to fund, sign, and pay reparations when they want to the slaveholders, but then on the right, no reparations exist, and all of these foolish arguments about fortunately, I'm not the person that, whatever it may be, right? That you see in chats all the time under the same spirit of destruction and death that continues to operate in society, says all these things because you know that they're not right. And now we have to turn to the same entities that have been wrong all along and make a declaration that they do right and become just. So just think about that in the sense of what we're talking about here. And so the issue is not whether reparations exist in law or by law. The issue is whether they'll extend them to those who were actually enslaved or the descendants of those who were actually enslaved. Because those people are not alive anymore doesn't mean that the generational harm and injury, which requires a legal remedy, legal remedies being compensation for the harm, right? It still continues generationally. Anybody want to expound upon anything before I go to the next one?
Yeah, I would say this much. You know, there's always a talk about who was there and who did what. You know, but if you take something from someone, there's no stipulation or time stipulation on when the right thing is supposed to be done. If I steal wealth from somebody's family and they find out 100 years from now that that wealth that I got was stolen from their family, then it is in my obligation to return what belongs to them. So them by them not giving our forefathers the reparation that they deserve, they deprived us of what we were supposed to have also.
Exactly. There's no statute of limitations on murder, from what I thought, right? And so think about all the lynchings. Where's the justice for that? Emmett Till never got justice, right? And so what the U.S. tried to say to create a legal framing at the UN, on its face, it may sound like principled legal position, but the record tells a different story. For them to say there wasn't an international law at the time it occurred, there was nothing that they did wrong, essentially, is what they're saying. The hypocrisy lies in the things that they have done to show that they don't really believe this when it comes to them. They only believe it when it comes to us.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, the U.S. is on record for saying that the Bible is the Word of God. So if they have anything within their laws that's supposed to assume biblical principles, then they should be beholden to that statement of them believing so.
Yeah, well, part of it requires them holding themselves accountable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, but you kind of contradicted yourself just now because you said that they should be beholden, but then earlier you said that they don't believe. So based on what you just said, it doesn't make sense because you already know that they don't believe. So why are they going to be beholden to something that they don't believe? And here's what they want to do. They want to make you beholden because that puts you in a box.
Exactly. So they want the image of being beholden, right? Or they want the
image of morality. They want the image of morality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they want to be Captain America.
Exactly.
They want to be
want that image. They want that image around the world, but they don't want those deeds.
Not at all, because it will prove just like there's only one group of people that know the playbook.
Yep.
And then I'm gonna get off of that. I did want to ask you a question. Are we gonna go into the apologies? Yes or no?
We're gonna go into the contradiction. So today, what we're gonna do is
so we're not gonna talk about the apologies.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
All right. I'm jumping the shark. My bad.
Listen. We can talk about contradictions in the apologies next week.
Okay, let's do that.
We can always just have a chat about it. It's okay. But again, the theme of this is going to be about the issue. It's not whether reparations exist in our law. It's the issue is whether they will be extended to us, right? Extended to us. And so we're going to look at that contradiction by contradiction. You can go to the next slide.
Okay, before we do that, it's not possible for the devil's servants to recognize. Enough said.
Well, there's no truth in them, right? You are of your father, the devil, and when he speaks out of his own resources. So yeah, we get that. Here, let's talk about this a little bit, right? So the United States compensated slaveholders, and I think everybody has heard that somewhere, some way along the line. And if you haven't, if this is the first time that you're hearing that, I want you to know that when the slaves were freed, the United States compensated the slaveholders. Okay. Again, here's the name of the act. Signed by Lincoln. The federal government passed the District of Columbia Compensated Emancipation Act and they received a federal payment up to $300 per enslaved person. So slaveholders were compensated through a fund. Obviously, they were going to claim that fund. And if you really think about the way that the U.S. has had a tax structure, they probably were claiming the slaves on their taxes as well, right? So whatever funds that they could, get to compensate them for uh, the freedom of slaves is what they were going to go after. But when you look at law, we talked about this before. If you're in a car accident, okay, and if the person is at fault, even though you go through insurance companies, it's still a form of a civil claim. You're saying that your property and you were harmed and injured in some kind of way, and that person needs to restore what they messed up. Sometimes what happens when people get in car accidents, they get into such a bad car accident that they become permanently disabled, which requires the other party to pay for the harm, the injury, the damages, right? That's what you hear in lawsuits. You got to pay the damages, the harm and the injury. It's compensation. What were the damages? The slaves were freed with absolutely nothing. And if you think about, okay, did they have clothes on their backs or whatever, you can answer that question as to what they had, right? The Freedmen's Bureau was an entity that was erected but not resourced. So while they're willing to pay $300 per slave to slaveholders, and other things came with that, not just in Colombia, but around the US, such as land and other opportunities or incentives for letting their slaves go, the slaves left with nothing. Families were destroyed. Children were robbed from parents. Parents were robbed of their children. Those families were never re-put back together. There was no even thought about making them whole again, right? In something as simple as or complex, depending on how damaging it was, as a car accident has a mechanism by which you're providing to make the other person that you harmed or their property whole. But yet the slaves are freed and they received nothing. So the result was it started the generational harm that we still live with today, right? If you think about it, even in this sense, I talk about this all the time. Slave masters could rape and impregnate with impunity slaves, have children with those slaves, consider those children property, but yet the slave's children with his wife, the slaveholder's children with his wife inherited the wealth, the land, and everything else, sometimes even the slaves, right? The biological children from the slave master and the slave received nothing. Doesn't the nation and all of the states enforce child support payments to this day? So where is even the payments for you having children? And they inherit nothing, no land, no resources, nothing but slavery through partis sequitur ventrum. And if we were to think about it under the legal frame of child support, then the biggest deadbeat dads are slaveholders and their children, because they probably aren't giving up anything to their half siblings through slavery, and they don't even care. They don't even see them as people. So I want people to just think about the hypocrisy in the law that is enforced versus what we know needs to exist. Anything you guys want to expand upon on that?
Yeah, I do. I always mention that trauma is passed down from the parent to the child. This is scientific evidence. So you're talking about epigenetic, which is, you are always talking about epigenetic transmission, which is biological. The inurital effects, when a pregnant mother is going through trauma, her exposure to that. the behavioral and relational transmission, where your parents are traumatized, and then that's passed on to the child, that's passed on to the child, which you can see the disruptions in early childhood. And I'm preaching to the choir because I know this is everything that you know. I'm just going off of the stuff that I've researched and have been able to quantify. And then the environmental transmission, children's raised in households shaped by their parents' trauma, which could be poverty, instability, fear, silence around certain topics. Like if you got an uncle that's a child toucher, and I'm not speaking on nothing that ain't nobody never heard of. You got an uncle that's touching on the young little girls, and or the stepdad that's doing that. So you've got all of these things that are intergenerational and transgenerational trauma, and that's what they're called. I'm sure you know these terms.
Absolutely.
So based on that, you've got all of this pile of stuff. It's a miracle. It's 100% miracle, and it's the restraint of the Father that the people here, the so-called African Americans and the snakes right now, have not went and obliterated this goddamn place. It's a miracle because of all the decades and centuries of trauma that we have stacked and stacked and stacked on top of each other. So that's my comment, and then I want to address the Premier Group LLC's comment that he put that person put in the chat. I want them to elucidate. Go ahead, sis, or go ahead, brother, if you got something to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm listening.
So, what if I said, not only through epigenetics do we see the gene mutation, right, which you're talking about, but then also I researched my DNA and found out that, I'm not saying this is true about me. This is a what if, okay, that my great grandmother was raped by the slave master, and then that created a generation of mixed children who never received child support. Can I go and tell the government to enforce that child support? And is that a claim that they'll hear? Right? I just wonder, like, is that something that the United States government and all the states within it who are enforcing child support every day will hear my claim to child support and look up by last name and say, here's the amount that my family is owed because we never inherited any type of support or wealth from the children that he bore, for the children that he bore. I don't think that's a claim that they'll be willing to hear, right? And so the federal government looked at emancipation and asked, who suffered a loss here? And their answer was the people who owned other people were the ones who suffered loss, and the ones that the government recognized as commensable loss when the claimant was the owner of the enslaved people. The impact is a lot more when you look at parte sequitur ventrum. Parte sequitur ventrum not only allowed the slave masters to rape us with immunity, they were, didn't get any kind of consequences from that. It also said that which follows the belly, making the condition of the child of a slave inheritable based on the mother's condition. So it automatically, even if the child wasn't a child born by the slave master, it automatically puts the father out of the picture. That is how families became destroyed, and still look at the destruction that has done today. Another part of that is that it created a matrilineal system, right? So if we're talking about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they'll say, forget that. We talking about the woman's condition, and the baby coming out of her womb follows the condition of the mother, establishing everything through the matrilineal system. So think about the family division that causes, the spiritual nature of that still is in effect today. Got anybody want to? I don't know if someone replied to what you asked in the chat, but we can pause right there for a second.
Yeah, I was waiting for that person to elaborate on what they meant. Slavery history did not happen the way we were told. Well, if you're saying it didn't happen the way you were told, then what really happened then? Because if you're saying that you did extracurricular research or you researched on your own, which some of us have, I mean, if you look at our, we did read some. We also did what happened in the original concentration camps, which the North handled during the Civil War. Which the North handled concentration camps, where you had the situation where you had the 20,000 people that died in that concentration camp in Georgia, and I forget the name of it. Devil's Punch Bowl. So you had Devil's Punch Bowl that happened. So if you're saying Premier Group, if you're saying history did not happen, then you need to be able to elaborate within this chat what position, what perspective you're taking, so that we can either agree or disagree, or do what we need to do to address what you're saying, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna yield.
And we didn't mention anything about what there's a lot of claimants in this, right? People that are claiming they were already here and enslaved. Okay. People that were brought by ship. We're not dividing on any of those claims or lines. We're talking about slavery that existed, that has continued to impact us through generational harm, that has not been compensated for that harm. Just so that I could elaborate if that's what the person is talking about. I know that, there are several people that have evidence and proof that their ancestors were already here prior to ships being brought over. If that's what you're saying, I'm not disputing that, right? But everything that you bring forward has to have some type of proof and some type of evidence. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. All right. So as you see right here, Abraham Lincoln signing the proposal for the compensated emancipation, and you see some of the language of that proposal that he became, an act, and that is the United States will furnish pecuniary aid to any state which may adopt a gradual or immediate abolition of slavery, which puts a different narrative on what you traditionally learn about Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves. They wouldn't recognize the commensable loss when the claimant was the person who had been enslaved, but the U.S. knows how to give reparations when the claimant is the enslaver. The compensation was appropriate for the injured party, not someone that lost ownership. And so we need to look at the contradiction even within that, and how the U.S. has continued to operate under that contradiction. Lincoln and Congress proposed the federal compensated emancipation programs for other slaveholding states. So it wasn't just the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia had an act, and then he had the compensated emancipation programs for other slaveholding states. So when you're looking at the proof, a lot of times you're not going to find everything in one place, right? You have to look at what was happening around that time frame or after in what the US codified, because this is a codified system. It doesn't work off of oral tradition unless it feels like it. But everything is written, organized in some systemic way, and compiled as a system of laws, a governance structure. We talk about 3 branches of government, right? And then the so-called people. That's what they created as this codified system. So by law, when someone's harmed or injured, they are supposed to be able to receive a legal remedy. Why are we the exception? The plans were never fully implemented because some states rejected them. Not all, but some did. But the principle was established that the federal government accepted the slaveholders could be compensated for the losses connected to slavery. The issue again with this compensation emancipation program that states rejected because they didn't want to get rid of their slaves, because it was going to be an economic downfall extremities to the highest degree for them to be able to free their slaves, they rejected them. Other states agreed, right? But we see that the framework has always existed. The reparations legal codified framework has always existed. Okay. So the issue also has been who would have received the benefit. A lot of people talk about this when they think about the civil rights laws and acts that exist. Who is the biggest beneficiary of those types of laws and acts? The federal government established the legal and policy framework, and that shows again their contradiction with what they originally said, that they don't recognize reparations owed for historical wrongs because no international law exists. Remember, that's the premise that we're working off of, the contradictions. So if you can see, the plan included payments for the loss of enslaved persons. That's on the right, my right, maybe it's not your right. Federal funds provided over time, a formal agreement between the US and the state. The slaveholding states rejected the offer, even though the framework, legal and policy existed. Okay. They wanted to keep their slaves. So if you want to move on, we can move on. Now, here we know that the United States restored wealth to the former Confederates after the Civil War. Large amounts of land were returned. Okay. People always say 40 acres and a mule is what we were supposed to get. Well, large amounts of land were returned to the former Confederates. They restored their wealth. They made them whole again. If you think about that car accident example that I gave, right? This wasn't an isolated decision. It was the president and Congress. And they went further. They developed, more funds over time with a formal agreement between the US and states for various types of payments. So as you can see, they got their property interests restored, the political rights were restored, presidential pardons were issued. Former Confederates, we see presidential pardons being a huge issue and focus of today. Talking about the today reparations bill that was announced a week or so ago, right? There was pardons that were issued for some of those people that are stated to be able to claim the reparations. So you see that that's a part of what the US is able to codify when it wants to. Former Confederates were reintegrated into power, right? But at the same time, promised land, 40 acres and a mule, like I said, for freed people was largely revoked. The promises disappeared. Millions of people formerly enslaved entered into sharecropping and debt peonage. And all, did they really, when we're looking at the recovery of freedom, when we're talking about true liberation, were they really free? You have this system of sharecropping, debt peonage, and ultimately convict leasing. They just slavery by another name. And so justice, again, under the US legal and codified system, existed for some, but not for all. They received no land, no wealth, no justice. The system wasn't broken for them, but we are the exception. And we continue to say, why are we the exception? Anyone want to expound upon that?
No, my only thought, I put it in the comment section where
Oh, I'm
if
sorry.
you had a notion of the left and the right, one being more equitable for you than the other, that's a lie from the pit of hell. Point blank, period. The left is evil and wicked as hell. The right is evil, wicked as hell. The left is watching the genocide happen in the Middle East. And I know that us so-called African Americans, Black folks have pulled back on us jumping out the window, but I'm gonna jump out the window on this one because those wicked ass Israelis and the wicked United States government are bombing the hell out of those people and stealing what don't belong to neither one of them, but stealing that land over there and killing all the people. And the West is going to stand up there and look at it like, well, it ain't got nothing to do with us. But then the right will look at it and say, well, they deserve it. And the left will agree with it. Furthermore, when it comes to Ukraine, they will say, oh, those are our people over there. So we need to take care of. Those are our white people over there. We need to take care of them. That's what it's all about. But it goes deeper than that, because a lot of people don't know that those, and we talk about it all the time. We've talked about it several times. Those white people over there, those so-called Ukrainians, and I'm going to say something real crazy in a second. Those so-called Ukrainians are the same Jewish people that claim to be Jewish, number one. But number two, I'm not convinced, and I'm going to say this, and hopefully I don't care if we get banned or not. I'm not convinced that Hitler and the Jews is the same people. I'm not convinced that they're not. I'm convinced that they're the same.
Well, English is a Germanic language, and I always tell people to question that, right? Like, you can find out a lot by looking at language family trees, who is who and what really took place. Because if you look at Yiddish, it's a German language too. So, I think about what was really happening during the same historical time. And obviously, we don't have access to all of the documents. We have access to what they want us to see. Bring out the real documents and then let us evaluate those, right? But again,
well, here's one of the things that I grew up on. Hitler's mom was a Jew. Okay, and you guys go do this research. And from what I understand, isn't the Jewish people, they take the lineage from the mother and not the father?
Yep, matrilineal.
So that would make him a Jew. Now, here's another interesting point, and I always bring them up. I bring these two groups up for a reason in the Ukraine. You got Azov Regiment and you got Right Sector. What are those? If you don't know what those are, look them up. Azov Regiment and Right Sector are two Nazi groups, and they're critical and key to the Ukrainian army. Now, if he's a Jew, why would he have Nazi groups part of his army? I'm talking about Zelensky now, that wicked, evil, miniaturized bastard. Goddamn elfin troll. Why do they have that?
It's, and people can also look at the Havara agreement or the transfer agreement, because it specifies that those are German or Ashkenazi Khazar Jews. Okay. So the Havara agreement, or the transfer agreement, was a pact in 1933 between Nazi Germany and Zionist organizations. It says it in the agreement, to allow German Jews to immigrate to British mandatory Palestine while salvaging a portion of their assets. So again, if they were enslaved or tortured and mistreated, they still got to salvage assets upon their so-called emancipation.
Hitler's paternal grandmother's name was Mamir Schicklergruber. A fake few. Another one. So here's how they bamboozled the world. And y'all heard it here first. Here's how they bamboozled the world. They led you to believe that Hitler was different than the Jews when they was the same. They were the same goddamn people. The people that wear the Nazi symbols on the arm, the Third Reich and all of that, they're the same as the Jews, the same exact people. And those same people they brought over here in the form of Ukraine. Azov Regiment and Right Sector right now are in the United States right now, posing as Ukrainian dissidents or Ukrainian. What do they have when you do prisoner of war? You're a refugee now. You're a refugee because your land got destroyed. And what did Putin say that he was going to do? And he's been saying is, hey, I'm going to rid this area of the Nazis. And he's been a man of his word, because he's whooping their ass right now. Anyway, I'm a yield.
It's okay, brother. I mean, we need to be able to understand all of the components that were, contributing factors into our captivity, right? And what people were willing to do when it came to international law, the Habara Agreement, people leaving with some kind of substance, assets, liquidation, and everything else that happened, versus us being so called freed with absolutely nothing, and why we're making this argument over our reparations, right? The system, again, was not broken for everyone. It was fixed for those who once enslaved others. And I need for the audience to understand what that means generationally, because the wealth gap between black and white families, or so-called white, whatever, guys, people have, we know who we are, they know who they are, in America today, was not created by accident. It was created by a decision right here after the Civil War, when the government chose who would recover and who would only survive. Okay. So this is how you see it generationally. You can go to the
I
next
wanted
one.
to say something,
Hmm.
and it may sound a little discouraging, but it's actually not discouraging. It's actually good news if you when you look deeper than the surface. All the mechanisms and everything that they have working right now against us is working exactly the way they want it to work.
Yep.
Right? They designed this system to deprive us of those things. You're dealing with a people that have hatred, jealousy, and a lot of fear of us.
Hmm.
That's the good news, right? The good news is that they know something about you that you may not know about yourself.
Right.
You understand? Of what you can accomplish. Because nobody goes out of their way to try to hold somebody down that's not capable of doing some things that's just out of this world. I mean, and I mean, not even quiet is kept. But if you look and use your own eyes, and not through their visors, not through the doom scrolling and all the bad news and all this, if there's people like us that look like you and me that are doing some amazing things in the world.
Absolutely.
You know, we have, for example, the sister Wild Society, the brother Cleo, the brother Elisha, the
Hmm.
brother Najee, huge talented brothers, man, very talented. You know, the unfortunate thing about it is that we really don't get the support that we really need to bring the things forth that we want to bring forth. But we're working on those things ourselves to make sure that we can do those things. But yeah, they these people asking these people for reparations, it's not even about them doing what we ask. It's about us just asking, because the Father's the one that's going to bring things to fruition. You know,
Absolutely.
He's going to make sure, one, they let his people go, and that his people leave with great substance. You're right. The Most High is not slacking his word. He's not. And those who wait for him will not be ashamed.
Absolutely
So,
not.
so the reparations discussion, we're going to continue to have that discussion, because we're not waiting for somebody to crack the sky. All the
Mm-mm.
things that the Most High expects to happen, he performs those things through his people. You understand what I'm saying? When you read the scripture, he said, through by the hands of my people, Judah, I will exact vengeance. So
Hmm.
I don't got to get off the throne. His spirit is already in us. You just got to find that spirit, and you got to do something productive with it. Don't waste your talents. Don't get caught up in the spirit of people telling you can't. Don't be discouraged. Because if Salt of the Earth started this for a reason, it was to show a light at the end of the tunnel for our people. Don't give up hope. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, I mean, it's a good point, and I appreciate you lifting my work up, brother. Because I do this work with the foundational scripture, Psalm 89:14. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne. Mercy and truth go before your face. So we're going to continue to make our declaration because it's the right and just thing to do, even though we understand that there's no better nature of this system that we're appealing to. We're still going to make our declaration because it is the truth. So other people can say whatever they want to say, but we're going to continue to stand in the truth and for righteousness and justice. Go to the next slide. So I want you guys to think about the fact that the framework and the policy exists for the slaveholders, but it has also existed for other historical wrongs. Okay. So while the US's statement before the world was that they didn't recognize it as a historical wrong. There was no international law that existed at the time to say it was wrong, and so no reparations will be paid for historical wrongs. We see a contradiction right here in the fact that the U.S. has repeatedly paid for historical wrongs. They have compensated groups, right, for the past harms and historical wrongs and government actions. Right here, you see the Japanese American internment survivors. Civil Liberty Act of 1988 provided $20,000 and a formal apology. Okay, who they call the Native Americans claim settlements, billions paid to resolve treaty violations and land claims, and there are still land reserves today. I'll say reserves because that's exactly what it is. A reservation is on loan to them, okay, a piece of land to do whatever they wish to build their wealth on and have sovereignty. Agricultural discrimination settlements, we've seen some of these even in the past few years where over $2.2 billion were paid to farmers subjected to discrimination, right? We see numerous federal settlements paid through the very mechanism that the $1.776 billion reparations deal that the DOJ signed with Trump was paid through, and that's U.S. Code Title 31, Section 1304. If you have not looked at the actual case and the actual code, don't take everyone's word for it. Go and read it and look it up yourself, right? Read the US code yourself. That code entitled 31, and I'm going to just look at it real quick while I'm talking to you all. So the US code title 31, section 304, it establishes the judgment fund, a permanent indefinite appropriation used to pay final monetary judgments, awards, and compromise settlements against the United States. It is typically used when payment cannot legally be made from any agency's own budget. So I want you to look that up so you can see the conditions for payment, the public transparency on who pays. The treasury is legally required to publicly disclose specific details of payment made, including the responsible agency, the claimant, legal counsel, and the total amount paid, including principal and attorney's fees. The funds from that particular law, because the U.S. Code is a compilation of laws in the U.S., right? That's what the U.S. codes are. They're separated by titles and sections. How you'll see state laws and codes look, titles and sections, whether it be the public health code or safety or education code or whatever it may be called, the health and welfare code. So there's titles, and under Title 31 of the U.S. Code, Section 1304 is the core provision of the judgment fund. Okay, so the principle is already established. The government inflicted harm and can warrant compensation when it wants. The U.S. has done it before and it can do it again. The question again is, not whether reparations are legally impossible, right? It's why some harms are compensable and others are not. And as you can see, The thing that the fund does do, and it still does to this day, it hasn't changed, a permanent standing appropriation available to pay judgments and settlements against the United States, has compensated millions for historical government harms, and it's authorized from that title and code of the US Code. The mechanism exists, the precedent exists, and the will to do right is the question. And I like to say the ability to do right, because sometimes I look at what's happening, I don't really think there's any right in these people. I really don't. You hear them talk, they're speaking of their native language. And it reminds me of Hamashiach saying, you are of your father, the devil. You speak out of your resources, of your native tongue, lying. There's no truth in you. There was a murderer from the beginning, and there's no truth in them. So I just remind myself of that every time I look at these cases and contradictions and hypocrisy and policy and legal frameworks. And this is the construct we live under. We understand that, right? But our declaration is a greater one, as Brother Banya said. You can go to the next slide unless anyone has anything they want to say about that.
Yeah, real quickly, Job 9:24. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked. He covereth the face of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? That's the first thing I think about when I think about how contradictory and hypocritical, and man, they tell so many lies a day. Anyway, I'll go to the next slide. 1,000 lies a second.
How many lies can you tell in a second? And that's the question. You said 1,000, huh?
Trump, every time he come on, and his people, his cabinet, and the media just eat this horse shit up. He tell 1,000 lies a second. Period. Every time he open his mouth, every word that he says is a lie.
And that's how you know he's lying, because his mouth is moving.
Right. And I wonder if the people that are constantly putting in the chat that we're not owed any reparations know that the mechanism already exists in the US, right? Like, for the US to be able to get up and state a principle that they already established, but saying that they can't reparate, do the people watching that understand that the mechanism has already existed? Which brings us to this most recent example, the one that I was just speaking about, the $1.776 billion through the Anti-Weaponization Fund. That was authorized May 18th of 2026, which was after they testified before the UN, because believe me, anything you say can or you will be used against you for a court of law, is kind of the way we need to be thinking about what they said during that UN General Assembly meeting, right? That was in March of 2026, the UN General Assembly meeting. And then in May of 2026, here's a reparation. 54 days after the United States voted no on reparations at the United Nations, the Department of Justice announced the Anti-Weaponization Fund. $1.776 billion in monetary compensations, payments to eligible claimants, claims procedures, a formal process for submitting and reviewing claims, formal acknowledgement, including official apologies, administrative review processes, all funded through the same judgment fund, the US Code 31, Section 1304, the same judgment fund that authorized this 2026 reparation for Donald Trump, his sons, and the Trump organization. So the machinery exists, the legal precedent exists, and the funding mechanisms exist. It's not about capability, and I don't think it's ever been about capability or capacity to do it. It's an issue of choice. Know that when they're saying that there was no historical wrongs done and that there wasn't an international law forbidding slavery at the time that the US had slaves, and that no reparations are owed, that's a choice. The federal government has proven time and time again that they're able to compensate for past harms, historical wrongs, with their signature on their document and their fiat currency. 54 days, they have a fund and all of the mechanisms needed to pay it out of $1.776 billion. So we're asking the question, why are we the exception to a legal right to reparations? We can go ahead and go to the next slide.
You
Excuse
get a
me.
chance, I wanted to share a video.
Yes. Excuse me. We're almost at the end of my presentation, so definitely if you want to do it now, or do you want to wait till the end?
No, I don't want to interrupt. I don't
Oh,
keep your flow going.
okay. I just wanted to make sure. All right. And so we're again at the court question on what principled, because we see the legal basis exists. Does it even deny the possibility of compensation for the descendants of people subjected to U.S. chattel slavery? Right? If the United States can compensate slaveholders, just wrapping up from what we were talking about, the contradictions, restore wealth to former Confederates after the war, compensate victims of internment, compensate victims of discrimination, billions paid for agricultural, employment, and other discrimination claims, create billion-dollar compensation funds like the Anti-Weaponization Fund, then on what principled basis does it deny even the possibility of compensation for the descendants of people subjected to chattel slavery? Because as it stands in the US today, there is no legal mechanism by, I would just say it like this. There are legal mechanisms, but the courts do not even basically they don't recognize a right to us having reparations. So if I was to go to court tomorrow and file a federal lawsuit with the claim that I'm a descendant of chattel slavery and I am owed reparations based on this generational harm and the fact that my ancestors were never compensated, they left with nothing, that would get thrown out. People have tried. It's not that the attempts haven't been made. It's that the contradictions and the hypocrisy in the legal system that exists, where certain cases are heard and others are not. So, we look at what has been that generational harm and injury, that the damage that requires a legal remedy in the form of compensation. 246 years of chattel slavery. Some people may beg to differ about the number. I'm just going off of what's recorded in their records.
I was controlling all of the money.
Black codes, convict leasing. We didn't even touch on a lot of these things individually. Jim Crow, racial terror, which continues to exist today. I just saw that a woman was hung, and what they want to say is that's not a lynching. They're committing suicide. Really? Well, how did they get up on this building and put this rope on their neck and do this, or from this tree or this place off of this bridge, et cetera, et cetera? We got children that come up missing. People continuing to, provide slave labor through the 13th Amendment loophole and incarceration. Redlining, state sanctioned inclusion, or what we call state sponsored racism, from wealth building opportunities, right? The United States has shown that compensation is possible, but it chooses who to recognize. You go to the next slide. So as we know that this is what it has done historically, choosing who to recognize and who deserves reparation from harm. We
did more crimes. Look at crack versus cocaine. Crack gets you way more time, even though cocaine.
Okay, I'm sorry.
How expensive racism is, as food stamps are set to expire in just.
I can hear the video. I can hear
What is that?
I think that's the video.
Go ahead, we're good.
Okay. So as you can see, there's a scale on the left, right? And the Most High says that he abhors unbalanced weights and measures. I always think about that, like how it's abominable to the Father for there to be unbalanced scales, unbalanced weights and measures used as measuring tools to do what's being done. And you can see the scale on the left, they were compensated. And then the scale on the right, they were denied. No justice, no reparations. We got loans that are constantly denied to farmers and all kinds of other regular loans. You can look at the history of banking, restrictive covenants and deeds for housing, all kinds of things that we can just point to. And I'm sure people in that are watching this know of some ideas that they can think of as well of what happened to them, just outright discrimination, right? But yet deny justice. And when we even seek recognition, the United States suddenly claims that no legal right exists. The issue is not whether America recognizes reparations. The historical record proved that it does. The issue is who America chooses is deserving of repair. And the precise legal framing for what we just watched across all of those contradictions, okay, all 8 of those contradictions, that is not a consistent legal principle. It's a selective application of one. If compensation is appropriate for some historical harms, the burden, this is legal terminology, you hear the burden of proof. Now the burden is on the government to explain why descendants of chattel slavery alone have been excluded. They have not explained that to date. There really isn't an explanation that'll survive legal scrutiny. I want you guys to know that. So they probably just opt instead to just say, this is what we're going to do, and we don't care what you think about it. But what we are doing is by engaging with the UN is compelling that answer forward. Having our day in court. People have talked around us, talked about us, said all of these things that should and shouldn't exist, and have heard from everyone on the record except for us. Do you have anything to say right here?
Not at all.
So if you want to go to the next slide, and then we're going to finish. So the time to speak up is now. We heard what happened on the General Assembly floor when the US, Israel, Argentina voted no on reparations. And though we are not, conceding that the African Union or the Ghanaian president represent our claims, we have to speak now, okay? Governments have submitted records, organizations have submitted records, lawyers have submitted records, ordinary people like me and you can submit our records too. And that's what the community submission, if you go to thevoteauthority.com, is designed to do. Where you have to read through the submission, submit your experiences, your evidence, whatever it may be. The address to send it to, the email address to send it to the UN is there. And we are recording before the world who we are, that we are a distinct group of people, and that we and our evidence have not been heard. So it matters how you treat this moment in history. We're making the record and setting the record straight. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to you, Brother C, unless there's anything else you want me to talk about with regards to the submission.
No, before we do that, I do want to throw up the website because we did get a question about context, and someone asked that question in the comments section. So I want to make sure they were asking the question of call to action, the comments on the last video. And so I'm going to throw up the website, and then I want you to go through from your perspective, what the call to action is and how they should respond. But I want to do that from the website perspective. So let me know if you can, when you see the website on the screen, and then we
Okay.
can go from there. Okay, so it's up right now.
Okay. If you could go over to the actual community submission and open it up.
It's open.
And I want people to know this is just the beginning, right? We're making a declaration that we're a totally distinct and separate group from the African Union and from any other claimants that have been on record thus far, and we need to be heard. We haven't even done, that's our declaration. This is our entry point. So do you see the community submission template? That's what I would like to see if that can be opened.
That should be on downloads.
Okay, if you want to open that, this is a response, like I said, to March 25th, 2026, where the UN voted to pass the reparations law and said that slavery was the gravest crime, declaring it a crime. And when a criminal activity takes place, charges are typically made. Can you open the actual document, or doesn't? Will it?
It's actually it's not actually open, but do you want me to download it and open it, go through the process of what?
No. So
the
here,
user might
if you
do?
no. I
Okay.
can just explain it. So if you come to the boldauthority.com, you're gonna find the DUSCS community submission template. Okay, it has 4 sections. Section 1 obviously is who I am. Who am I, right? Introduce yourself and your lineage. You're a descendant of the United States chattel slavery. State that, name your family, name where you're from. Section 2 is why you support the submission. And the submission that we're referring to is a letter that I wrote to the UN, to the special rapporteur, and the UN General Assembly and some other parts of the UN, stating that the United States had to be questioned and challenged on what they meant that day when they said they don't recognize a harm, historical wrong that was done. There was no international law that existed at that time, and therefore they don't recognize the right to reparation. So section 2, you're going to explain why you support my challenge, right? That the US is wrong and there are ongoing harms, okay? There are legal arguments that I make to show that there are ongoing harms. You don't have to be a lawyer to do this. I don't want you to get overwhelmed. You just need to say, I know what was done and I know it was never repaired, and I know the effects are present in my family's life today. You can give examples if you want to, okay? You can give examples if you want to. What that means for you, right? Your personal testimony goes on section 3. If you can see section 2, it tells you exactly the arguments that I submitted. Are these the end all and be all arguments? Absolutely not. You don't even have to use this template. If you want to create your own submission, please by all means do, but just don't be silent. The email address is right there. The submission that I put into the UN argues that the descendants of U.S. chattel slavery are a legally distinct group, not the African diaspora, and not a group represented by the African Union, but the specific descendants of people subjected to U.S. domestic chattel slavery and under U.S. law. Okay, you're gonna support the argument if you want, because it's the most precise argument. Currently, what we have is the African Union making claims for everyone that they consider legally in the diaspora. And if you don't, make a counterclaim, then that claim is going to be accepted. And the more counterclaims we have, the bigger our voice gets before the world, the bigger our declarations become. And we have to be given our day to be heard. All right. So section 3 is going to be personal testimony. Section 4 is your request, right? Go down and I just give examples. You don't have to, these may not be the examples that come to mind. Pray about it. Put whatever you believe is your personal testimony. That your identity was stolen. Put that. We've been renamed 5 or 6 times, from Afro-American to African-American to Negro to Black to you name it.
Color, one of my favorite
Color,
color.
right. All of that, you know, is about identity. How has that impacted you, right? And your family, right? And here's the request. I respectfully request that the Human Rights Committee include in its list of issues prior to reporting for the United States fourth periodic review, the questions proposed in a submission that I filed. It's going to have my name there because I filed the document 8 days after the UN passed the resolution presented by Ghana, because I knew that there were issues with not only the AU presenting that and claiming us as the African diaspora, but also with what the US said in its no vote, because they were creating a legal argument, not just an opinion or we don't feel like talking about this kind of conversation. They were setting up their legal argument. So I knew we had to act. Okay. You can go on to section, oh no, that's going to be it. There's 4 sections, your truth on the record, download the template. On another part of the website, you'll see exactly what I submitted. You'll be able to see it. When you download the template, you're not going to email it to me. You're going to email it directly to the UN. As you can see by the live red bar right there, the name of the document has the email address in it after the word submission. Okay. One submission is a statement. I want y'all to hear this. One submission is a statement. 100 is a pattern. 1,000 becomes evidence. 10,000 is a historical record that no treaty body can ignore. So this is the importance of why we're continuing to have this talk and explain, you know, the submissions process and our entry point. We're nowhere near done, but we are going to continue to make declarations, or we're not going to continue to allow other people to make claims for us when we can speak for ourselves. So download the template, fill it out, submit it, and send it to 5 other descendants today. Right? I started out with the example of the ants. We don't have to procrastinate or be lazy. We can do this today, because history isn't written by the people who suffered. Right now, we see history and the narrative is documented by the people who didn't suffer. So we have to be the ones to document what happened to us. They're not going to do it out of the kindness or whatever of their own hearts, because it ain't there. It's not there. This is not a matter of opinion, and it's not a matter of feelings. It's about building the record in a codified system. We're documenting it, and you preferably, if you can get your submissions in by August, that would be good, because there's another General Assembly meeting at the UN in September. One in September, one in November. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, brothers, unless anybody has any questions.
No, I don't have any questions. I'm putting the link up to the downloads page. And family, it's important that it doesn't matter. I mean, we understand that it matters that we're Israelites, and we know that we're Israelites. However, this discussion goes beyond the pale of what you would consider what you consider your lineage and what others consider their lineage. So it doesn't matter if you're an Israelite, if you fall under the religious banner of Christianity, or if you're a Muslim, if you're a Moor, if you're an atheist, as long as you were here and your family went through the horrors of transatlantics, and that could be if you were indigenous and if you were brought over in transatlantics, because in my mind, those were the same people. The people that came over on ships, there were people that came on ships, and there were people that were here. And so how do you reconcile that? Well, we're not going to make that distinction now. However, it is incumbent upon us, all of us, and if we have family members, don't worry about salt of the earth or trying to build up a proper salt of the earth. Go tell your family to fill out this document. Point them to this website. You don't even have to mention salt of the earth. Point them to the work, and then the call to action is you fill out your own form in your own words. You submit it to the UN, and I'm gonna yield on that.
No, that's exactly what the point is, right? Instead of the African Union going before the world and making a declaration that they represent us as the African diaspora, but you remember what the president said. He's not asking for any money. He's just trying to do the right thing. Remember that?
Yeah, that burned my mind up when he said that, because to me that's a setup. Because if he represents, just imagine if Africa represents that portion of it, what a person gets, then they're going to take this conglomerate that they put together and say, okay, they've already said that they don't want cash payments. Okay, they don't want tangibles. They don't want gold, silver, platinum, palladium, rhodium, and land, all the things that they've stolen and all the treaties that they've broken that they promised. So because of that, if Ghana's speaking for us through Uncle Al, the Kitty Powell, and that other mushmouth Benjamin Crump, then they're going to rubber stamp that. And Benjamin Crump, Al Sharpton, NAACP, NAN, Urban League, none of those groups speak for you.
Right. We saw what they said when they were invited to speak for us. And I don't know how they got on the list, right?
Yeah, they got on the list because
they didn't ask for anything.
Well, the back office says that, and I'm not going to accuse them. I'm not going to slander them, but what would compel me to go and speak before and talk like I'm talking about reparations, Al Sharpton and Benjamin Crump, but then knowing that, okay, this is a setup. This president, this leader of Ghana, who don't speak for Brother C at all, because I don't know him and don't met him. His bloodline is not my bloodline. His bloodline did not go through transit lines. Matter of fact, they owe us reparations.
Yep.
The Swiss owe us reparations. Portugal owes us reparations. Spain owes us reparations.
Oh, yeah.
All of these wicked bastards owe. So Ghana, you can, and to me, what I see them doing is they're in league with the enemy.
Of course.
I'm not claiming Ghana.
I don't know if y'all still. I didn't know if y'all still wanted me to play that
yes
video.
Yes, definitely.
It's a short video. It's just like a minute, I think.
Yep.
But it's in the same scope of the reparations discussion. Yo, brother Cleo, my apologies for interrupting.
Oh, don't worry about it, man. I you know how
No.
I get on the soapbox. Let me stop sharing, and figure out how to stop sharing. Stop sharing. Okay, you go ahead and run with it, bro. No apologies necessary. I appreciate the stoppage because you know how I get.
Nah. Here we go. So this guy, he has something to say. Make sure I got this up good.
Saying that the Black History Museum has an overemphasis on slavery, what part should they focus on instead? The part where Black people got restitution? Because that never happened. The part where Black people got reparations? Because that never happened. The part where Black people got their 40 acres and a mule? Because that never happened. The part where Black people had their civil rights protected right away? Because that never happened either. In fact, it took until 1965, and even then, those civil rights are slowly being stripped away case by case. If you don't like that a museum about Black history focuses on the countless ways that white people in power have stripped away basic humanity from Black people for 400 years, here is an idea. Stop suppressing basic humanity for Black people, pay restitution, pay reparations, protect civil rights, and dismantle the white supremacist infrastructure that sustains to this day from the legacy of slavery. You don't get to violently enforce 400 years of white supremacist policies, profit off of them, make generational wealth out of them, sustain power from them, and then look in the mirror and get offended by what you see.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to share.
I like how he uses the term restitution, Brother Vanya, because that's the exact legal framing that we need to consider, right?
Mhm.
Restitution means that you have to restore something to its rightful owner or make amends for the loss, damage, or injury. I've been talking about that throughout. And commonly, people think of restitution as something that's a court order financial compensation by a convicted criminal to the victim, right? But it can also be looked at as a legal remedy used to restore parties to their original positions following a breach of contract. So I really appreciate that he used that word. It's the feedback on the
Yeah,
video.
yeah. I think those things are important, especially
Something happened to Brother Banya's
restitution.
sound.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear him fine, sis. I can hear you fine, brother.
Can you hear us, sister?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yo,
I don't think she can hear us.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, she's on mute right now. Now I unmuted her. It looks like it says she chose to mute herself. So I don't know if we should remove her and bring her back. I'm gonna remove her for a second. And so she's off right now. I'm gonna add her back, unmute her. Sister, if you can unmute your mic is muted. So it sounds like be right back, no sound. Okay, I'm gonna remove you. So while sis, you could come back. I'd say come back, and then we'll add you back in. And so leave and come back. But in the meantime, he looked like the guy who was speaking looked like he was either an Arab or an Indian person. Hey sis, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear now.
You know, they always like messing with my sound at the
Oh yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. That's typical though. I mean, at
Did
least
you
they're
hear what
not.
I said? Did you hear what I said about the video?
No, go ahead. I think we caught part of it. You can go ahead and repeat it though.
I was talking about restitution being the proper term that the guy used on the video. Did anyone hear that?
Yeah. I heard that part. That's
Okay.
right before you went dark.
Okay. I'm not shocked. I'll leave it there.
Well, I mean, we know that they gonna jiggle wires and they're gonna continue to do that. And mind you, they already got a shadow ban, so they have our video streaming down to a live trickle. But that's okay because the Father will get this video out to those that should get out to, and then it will proliferate to the whole house of the 100 million of us that are here, because I don't believe it's 40 million. I don't believe that number that they put out. They lie about everything. Do you think that they would tell you the truth on how many of our people are actually here?
No.
Come on now. These people lie about every single thing. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, I mean, restitution, reparations, and repatriation. You know, that's what's needed. You know, I think when we talk about a lot of the discussions on the channel, we try to explain it in a less religious fashion, if that's, you know, for instance, opposed to, you know, saying, you know, Christians stole the Bible. That's actually, you know, what do they call it? When somebody takes your culture, they culturally appropriated the Bible. You know.
Not only that, but I still got the $1,000 bounty out if somebody could show me one Christian in the Bible. Give me their name, rank, and serial number. Give me what precept they at and what precept they call themselves that. Because Mashiach did not call himself no goddamn Christian.
Exactly.
Mashiach wasn't no Christian. He was an Israelite from the tribe of Yehudim, according to the book. And his daddy was a carpenter. You show him like the Zigzag Man, some skinny, frail, sissy in Greek clothing that didn't even look like him. And stop showing him. If you see a stained glass, bust it out. Stop showing him like that.
Did he have sunscreen on?
Man, that Charleston has said hippie hair on Attica Greek guard ain't had on the sunscreen.
I just want to hear you go off about it.
Unless he put mud on himself and was acting like he was in blackface. That hippie ain't saying nobody. And then when you see a Christian, ask him, when is the rapture gonna happen? I love asking them that. You go have no goddamn rapture because it don't exist.
I tell them they missed their rapture. They Messiah sitting in jail. It was called the help the sculptor. That was y'all rapture.
You think people can't sleep at night after you told them that?
Man.
Help the sculptor. That was their rapture right there. They missed it.
He do look. The Cesare do look like him. But again, family, we gonna close out unless the family got anything to say. Hey, listen, it's important for everybody to get to the website. It's important for you not necessarily to tell them about Salt of the Earth, but get the information. Go to the website, get the information. Have you and any adults that are 18 or over fill out the form and submit it to the UN. That's what we're hoping happen, because it's not about Salt of the Earth at this point. It's about us getting what we're owed. That's it, and that's all.
Salam.
Render unto Caesar's was Caesar's, and unto Yah was Yah. And this is a codified system. They don't work off of just our words, obviously, even when we have evidence, but we have to make our declarations and we have to use the format that they recognize, right? So I'm thankful for everyone that joined. I still believe in each one teach one, each one reach one, just the philosophy behind that. I think that we can reach people quicker than this platform can any day of the week, right? So all of you have your charge and call to action. Thank you for watching and thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week.
And this has been another Salt of the Earth Productions.